Hi, this is O.C. Ferrell again, and we want to thank you for all of the work you've been doing here in the Ethics Certificate Program. The interaction has just been incredible this entire term, and we really appreciate the questions that you've been embedding and discussing in each week, but also the ones you sent to me and Linda. And so I'm going to attempt to answer a few of these questions. I probably won't get to all of them, but one of the questions is pretty good. How can community stakeholders match the influence of corporate lobbyists? So many people believe there's an imbalance of legal, political, and financial power of corporate entities over the people. But I want you to know that even though this may be a business ethics issue in some respects, it's probably a little bit more of a corporate social responsibility question. And should corporations use their power and their money just because they have it to try to overly influence their own selfish interest? And I think there are many in society that would say if you took a stakeholder orientation approach, that you would take into account not just your own personal interest, but the personal interest of all of your stakeholders, which should be the community, as well as the regulatory entities, as well as suppliers, customers, uh, all suppliers, all of your various stakeholders. So the fact that you can make contributions, corporate contributions to these super PACs, which essentially do campaigning for individual candidates, it has probably disrupted the balance of power we have. But I have a lot of faith that over time, with our free society and mass media, that these influences will be counterbalanced. But it's certainly an issue to discuss in the classroom. Another question we had, I thought was very good. What is it like to go into companies and help them create ethical cultures? Do you have any good stories to tell? Well, I have a lot of stories to tell. I've worked with a number of companies that are trying to improve their ethical decision making, but let me assure you that very few of these companies start off with a highly ethical culture and they just want to improve it. Every opportunity I've had, it's been associated with companies that were accused of some misconduct. They had pressure, say, from the state attorney general's office, or possibly from the FTC, or in some cases, the Better Business Bureau. And they wanted to do a better job with their ethics because their first reaction is kind of reactive rather than being long-term proactive. And it's kind of interesting that about 20 years ago, when the federal sentencing guidelines were passed, I worked with a partner and we had a small consulting firm where we were trying to help companies comply with the federal sentencing guidelines, which have really become the seven pillars of, of an ethical culture. Things like identifying risk, developing a code of ethics, developing an ethics officer for oversight, develop ethics training, monitoring, anonymous reporting, continuous review and evaluation. And I worked with one company in Denver, Colorado for about 5 years, and we saw them go from not knowing really anything about how to develop an ethical culture to putting all of these various dimensions of an ethics program in place. And since we helped them with the work that they do and develop their ethics program, they haven't had any violations, legal violations, or bad publicity. So, I think it really works to develop an ethical culture, and it usually doesn't happen, though. So I mentioned the consulting firm, until companies have a problem, they have an issue. It's very hard to get people who already are functioning without a major problem to get into the ethics area. Now, another question we had, pretty interesting. What do you do when your boss tells you to do something that you see as unethical? I've had this question many times, and one of the more interesting things about this question is it's up to you in a particular situation. You have to, in terms of communicating, you have to understand the political and the organizational dynamics of where you are in a particular organization. But for when students ask me this question, I always say, don't do anything that you know is highly unethical or illegal. And how do you cope with it if you're really questioning whether this is something you should do or not? If you don't feel comfortable doing it, what about telling your boss, I don't feel comfortable doing this? You've asked me to do something that I think is within my own value system, just doesn't feel right. I wouldn't say not appropriate, but put it in very good terms and say, could you ask? I'll do anything that you want me to do here that I feel comfortable with, but maybe you could ask someone else to do that one because I don't really feel good about doing it, or I don't think I'll be good at doing it. It's really a lot to ask someone to be a whistleblower or to tell their boss that what you're doing is very, very bad. If you can do it, that's fine. But for many, especially rookie employees, new employees, one of their best things they can do is to try to engage conversation. And if you do say, I don't feel comfortable doing it, and then you get a discussion going, then you can explain why you don't feel comfortable and maybe even change your boss's idea toward the particular topic. As you can see, I'm here today beside the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative principles that we've developed. Were approved about a month ago by the Daniels Fund, and I think we posted those in one of our summaries that we sent out last week. And we find that the principles are very useful. We're actually using those and giving them to students to use when they're doing a case solution or a role play solution. So we hope that you might experiment some with these principles and see if you can possibly use them. Thanks again, and we'll be back before the end of the term, and appreciate everything you've been doing there, and stay in touch.